welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, Fireside Chat. Everything you know about hyenas may be wrong, presented by South African expedition leaders Richard de Gouveia and Matt Meyer. It's so great to have you both with us today. I'll hand things over to you, Richard.
Thanks so much, Kendall, and thanks, NatHab, for handling this for us. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this. This is me on the left here and Matt on the right, and I've been guiding with NatHab for just over 6 years and do some crazy places, but one of the best things I get to see are hyenas. And Matt, what about you, bud?
Yes, thanks, Kendall, and thanks, NatHab, for hosting us. And yeah, I'm on the other side, the one closest to the hyena. I don't have something on my shoulder again. Yeah, hyenas are arguably some of my favorite predators to watch and spend time with. And one of the reasons being is because they're such misunderstood creatures, and that's something that we're hoping to dig in a little bit deeper tonight to explain just what these creatures are about. So hyenas are phylogenetically, actually, they are closer to cats, so closer to the Felidae. Hyenidae make up their own family, and they're comprised of 4 extant species at the moment. So you've got your striped, your spotted, and your brown, and then the little one on the bottom right-hand side is the aardwolf, Afrikaans word for earth wolf. Now, those 4 species are spread out fairly evenly without very much overlap between them across the continent of Africa. Your striped hyena, a lot in North Africa and West Africa, then the brown down the coast of West Africa and a little bit into Southern Africa, and then the spotted pretty much the whole of Southern and East Africa. And then the aardwolf kind of sandwiched in the middle of that in mainly your drier, sandier areas. Now, they are out of all of the species in Hyenidae, they are probably the oldest evolved. So they evolved the first out of them, and they have remained genetically similar for the longest period of time. And they often attribute that to their diet being completely different to the others. The others are 100% carnivorous, whereas the aardwolf are predominantly insectivorous. So they actually eat termites, ants, and lots of little bugs. And that's what they reckon is the main reason how they have been so successful. And then the brown hyenas are your sort of Southwest African and also your drier area hyenas. And famously, that guy looked like he stuck his finger in an electrical socket. It's actually a cub of a clan of hyenas in the Kalahari Desert in South Africa. You can see that very red sand there. And they've got that very shaggy, very fuzzy appearance, and that's to do with their thermoregulation abilities in the desert. But they're most notable and most well known for their interactions that they have on the west coast of Southern Africa and Namibia, where they spend a lot of time on the beach and they actually hunt seals. And that's one of the pictures there of Richard's of a brown hyena on the Skeleton Coast in Namibia. And then, yeah, Richard's going to tell you a few things about the other 2 species of hyena.
Yeah, so I think let's tap in a little bit more on the brown hyena and the spotted hyena. We'll look at a bit of the differences between the 2. Brown hyenas, just in general, because of their desert habitat, have a much larger range that they cover. And when they're marking, both the spotted and the brown hyena use little anal glands, which they mark. And when a spotted hyena goes, it's quite a funny thing to watch, because he'll put a piece of grass between these 2 lips of an anal gland and then leave a pasting. It's called a pasting. It's a little white pasting that goes on, and it's a long-term scent thing, whereas a brown hyena will actually leave two, one a short-term and another one a long-term thing. And because of these massive ranges that these brown hyenas cover, they need to have adapted to that. So one, we've spoken about the hair already. Matt's brought in this ability to be able to thermoregulate between really hot days and very cold nights in Namibia. This guy had just come off of hunting seal pups along the edge, a really smelly place, but a beautiful place to visit nonetheless. And they have the ability to smell a kill from about 5 miles away, and can hear or smell a kill, sorry, from about 10 miles away, and can hear a kill from about 5 miles away. So these incredible senses. Whereas a spotted hyena, on the other hand, they don't have as much of a wide range of movement. They can move long distances. One of the reasons why they move long distances is to get to food sources. But generally, these guys can hear lions feeding from about 8 miles away. So the incredible hearing ability, they are thought of as scavengers, but they're actually more successful at hunting than what lions are. And they do a lot of hunting on their own. Everything out here or in the bush is always trying to use as little energy as possible. And if that means stealing a kill or scavenging off of something, why not? But when that option is not there, they will definitely move along from there. These guys are really cute. They're not blessed with good looks, but functionality is a big part of it. So I'm going to jump back to this image again. And they've got these longer forelimbs, which allows for a fulcrum effect. So this guy you can see is carrying a bone, but if they're stealing something, say a kill from a leopard, they're able to lift that kill off the ground, get some clearance, and run with it so that they can get away with that food source. And these guys are very misunderstood in the general point. Their clans and families can get huge. There is a family or a clan of hyena in the Serengeti that has 300 individuals to it. A very complex social society whereby they use enormous amounts of phonetics and language. So I'm going to play a video here, and you can listen to the noises that these guys make.
Yeah, and in actual fact, they have a far greater range of vocalization than the king of the jungle, the lion per se. They will be able to communicate with one another in a far more complex way and manner than even something like a lion or leopard.
Completely. I mean, they've got 14 different vocalizations, which if we think of phonetics, if you start mixing those together, it forms a pretty complex language.
Yeah, almost a language.
I'm going to hand over to Matt because I'd like him to explain a little bit about the male and female size differences and how these clans work.
So out of all of the species of hyena that we previously discussed, the three, excluding the spotted hyena, the three are more like your traditional, where the male is typically has a higher level of testosterone and is the bigger individual. But that is the opposite in hyenas, where with the spotted hyena, where the females are actually significantly larger than the males are, and they also have the presence of what appears to be male genitalia. But that is due to the increase in higher levels of testosterone that females have in the spotted hyenas. But yeah, these clans, they can reach up to 200-300, as Richard pointed out, predominantly in Southern Africa, where we do a lot of guiding and where we have spent a lot of time with them. Their clans might reach up to sort of 20 or 30 individuals with an incredibly complex hierarchical system, which is completely matriarchal. So females top of the food chain, and then that will follow down nieces and daughters and aunts, etc., from the top level all the way down to pretty much bottom level will be your males, to the point where if you have if you have 2 cubs that are born, most litters are 2 or 3 cubs in a litter. The female, if she'll often get much larger than the male and will sometimes push them out compete them within their own litters. And the sort of strength between the two, if it's 2 females, sometimes one will often kill the other, and that's their own system. Very, like I said, very complex greeting system. You can see them here. One's come back from a forage or a hunt, and just coming back to the den. Cubs are greeting. They're greeting one another, very similar to how you would see if you take your dog to the park and it runs up behind another dog and sniffs its bum and says, "Oh, hey, George, how's it going?" That's kind of what they do here, showing us some of their very their nasty teeth that they've got for what it is they do best. But they are, I mean, there are many wildlife filmmakers that have followed these animals for years and years on end to just tap into and dig into that hierarchy, and it's something that they can't quite have an exact, okay, this is how this works. If you look at a pride of lions, you can see fairly well who sits where on that proverbial food chain. But with hyenas, it's so complex that you can spend years with a clan and then you realize, actually, no, this one is not too happy with that one. And they will oust. I mean, you'll have a clan of hyenas and there'll be a dominant female. And there've been actual coups that have been documented where 2 or 3 subordinate females will gang up, much like you see in the likes of things like the chimps, where they have an internal, okay, let's vote Susan out, and then they kick her out, and then that's it. It's not like, oh, you're part of the group, but you're just subordinate. It's you're gone. You didn't run it well. We're going to take over from here. And then they will. The males are pretty much just there for the sake of procreation. They don't really do much in terms of defending a territory or an area. And they just, you'll see, that's one thing you can see, is if you go to a den site where you've got all of the females looking after one another's youngsters and their youngsters, and you see that one lying off on the side, that's probably the male. He's just sitting there. He's just trying to keep his head down, keep his nose clean, and not get in anyone's way, because he is a lot smaller than the females, and they won't hold back if they do beat up on him.
So I think where Matt is really touching on is just the complexity of this whole thing is driven by what is an incredible brain. And these guys have amazing ability to solve problems, and there are numerous problems that we've done with primates, chimps, gorillas, orangutans, and they're all able to individually, on an individual basis, solve specific problems. But when it came down to group problem solving, it was a problem, and we're talking group problem solving in a problem that humans put forward to them. Hyenas, however, were different. There was an experiment that was conducted on hyenas where they had a cage over meat with a pulley system, and it required, there were 4 ropes, and it required the weight of 3 specific hyenas out of 4 that were let in there in order to hang from these ropes in order to get the meat out from underneath. So they had to work out which combination of 3 it required and then get to the meat. Now, in most cases, what animals will do is jump up, grab the cord, pull down, cage opens, everyone let go, try get to the meat, and fail continuously. These guys figured it out, went in, the one that wasn't hanging went in, pulled the meat out, put it on the side, and then they ate. Then what they did, the scientists did, was change the 3 or the metric of how that would work. So it changed the number of hyenas or which hyenas needed to hang, and they figured it out again. So highly, highly intelligent creatures driven by this entire clan mentality, this matriarchal thing, lots of play around the den. And the den sites are very important for their time, these little ones will stick around, and they generally stay at a den site for anything between 6 and 9 months while tick loads build up and parasite loads build up. And then once they get too high, they will abandon the den site and go to a secondary one and rotate through those den sites. But obviously, because of who hyenas are, and because of, sorry, there's one last video here that just has to be shown because this little guy is too cute. Sorry, yeah,
And the
they are agile and
patient that the mothers show, that is unlike in most of the Hyaenidae, besides maybe a leopard will have that slight bit of it, but lions certainly don't have the patience for their cubs that hyenas will show.
Absolutely. So there's a great myth, and it was created by a wonderful movie called The Lion King. And here we see the 3 crazy hyenas from The Lion King.
My favorites.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it has created a perception of what a hyena is, just like Jaws created a perception of what a shark is. And we see them as scavenging, bone-eating animals. But bones are very much part of it. They have along the ridge of their skull, right at the top, they've got this a ridge that runs along, and their jaw bones, instead of attaching just above the jaw, go all the way to the top of the skull, so that they have these incredible, powerful jaws to be able to crunch through bone. Matt, I think you must tell us a little bit about this crazy guy here.
Well, because also so they're carnassials. That's another adaptation they've got. Their carnassials usually in most of the predators sit here, but theirs are situated all the way at the rear of their jaw, and that's to give them the best leverage for the strongest bite force. And now, so this picture here, and it was a series of pictures, well, there are 2 in this, but this goes back to what Richard was talking about with their ability to problem solve. Above this hyena, about 8 feet up, is a female leopard and her cub she had stashed her kill in this tree. And this hyena had tried to walk up this fallen over branch, and in the fork of the branch it had slipped, and its foot had gotten stuck in that branch, and it had then fallen off. Now, a lion or a leopard or a wild dog would have looked at this and gone, okay, this is where I die, and they would have just given up. But this hyena sat for about an hour and about 2 hours and chewed its way through this tree. It couldn't lift itself up because it was at the wrong point for leverage. So it saw, okay, what is the problem? The tree. It chewed its way through this tree until it finally released itself, much to the amusement of the leopard sitting in the tree above it. If there was ever a leopard that was smiling, I think it was that female that was above it. But this it shows you how smart they are and how they have this ability to solve problems.
I even had a situation at the lodges, and like Matt was saying earlier, that you often get hyenas coming into camp and trying to get to rubbish bins, to anything. They will scavenge. It's easier to get that sort of food. And we had a waste area that had a gate with a latch lock, so you actually had to slide a bolt into something and then latch it down. And the hyenas had watched people do it, to the point that they were able to use their lips and their teeth to lift up the latch lock and pull it over. And I watched the thing do it personally. I then went, chased it out, took wire and wrapped that wire up to form a lock. The hyena came back and chewed through the wire in order to be able to lift the latch and pull it across again to get to that stuff. So these guys are highly intelligent in that sense, and will take advantage of many different things.
Unbelievably smart, eh?
Yeah.
And yeah, and like Rich was saying, they're not just scavengers. Although they are incredibly skilled scavengers, and we'll touch a little bit further on that in our next section. But they're actually more successful in hunting. So when you describe or when you try and quantify a predator's success rate of kills, it is the number of successful kills based on an initiation of a hunt. And the top will be your wild dogs, and then everyone always thinks, oh, it filters on down and hyenas are at the bottom, where in actual fact lions are lower than hyenas. Hyenas are second, if not the third most successful of all hunters of what they initiate. And it also goes to that point where they've got that arch back and they've got that loping run, and they can run and run and run for miles on end. We had a hyena, and extremely resilient creatures. I mean, a cheetah, if it gets so much as a scratch on its ear, it could be the death of it. Lions don't do very well with injuries either. I've seen a hyena with no ears, one eye, and 3 feet. So one of its feet was missing. One of its hind feet were missing. It only had one eye and it had no ears. And this thing, we used to see this thing on Mala Mala often. And it would often go from one side of the property to the other. I mean, you can see one hyena here, and then half an hour later bump into another hyena, and they kind of look similar. You're not going to mix up the identification of a one-eyed, no-eared, 3-footed hyena. And sometimes this thing would be on the other side of the property within 30 minutes, and it's gone 4 or 5 miles in the same time it almost takes you to drive it. And so they have that ability, much like wild dogs, to continue on and chase down their prey. But then it's also that overwhelming size of a pack that will be able to bring down larger animals. And then when they're at carcasses and kills, much like those vocalizations we were looking at earlier, they will then call in the rest of the clan or the rest of the family group that have then the ability to feed as well.
I think the idea of that chasing things down over distance is a huge thing to work on. It's called coursing, and what they do is they just basically wear their prey down over distance. And through constant pestering, I've seen hyenas try and take newborn baby rhinos, newborn baby elephants. They've successfully taken down giraffe on their own. So they're very powerful creatures, but they have a lot of interaction with other creatures. So wild dogs is a great one for them to follow, just because of the fact that wild dogs are so successful. Like Matt alluded to now, they are probably the most successful of all of the hunters. Statistics rate them about 80% of the time they initiate a hunt, they will succeed in that hunt. And hyenas will come in to try and steal the stuff, and this leads to some incredible interactions. Now, although the video quality on this video is not the best, the sound is fantastic.
It's just absolute chaos, absolute chaos.
So you can see how they use their superior numbers, the dogs, to go in and try and get to the soft bits of the hyenas, and that fight often ensues. But there's been some pretty funny interactions. And Matt, tell us a little bit about vultures and what happened with this crazy guy.
So hyenas will, I mean, when you've got a carcass, a big carcass that dies of natural causes, or that lions have abandoned in the Sabi sands, most of the lions, if they find something like an elephant, a rhino, or a hippo, they don't have the strength in their jaw like a lot of the lions in Botswana or in East Africa do, from eating lots of big animals. So they'll be able to eat at it for a couple of days, and then they've got to move on. And then the vultures will come in, and then from that, the hyenas, vultures smell, etc., and they'll come in. And it's very much like, it was actually quite an accurate portrayal of the interaction on The Lion King, where a hyena will come in and barge, and you just see this explosion of vultures. And at this particular carcass, we were watching these vultures, and these hyenas came in, and they were chasing them back and forth. And it's one of those: am I gonna waste time chasing the vultures away? Does it make it worth it? Are they going to eat more meat in the time that it takes me to chase them away than I'm going to eat if I just let them be? And so they were kind of pushing and going and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And eventually this one hyena just ran after this vulture and ran a bit further than the vulture thought he was going to run. And the vulture didn't have enough time to take off. And as he was trying to take off, the hyena grabbed him by the backside. And as soon as the hyena grabbed me, realized, what have I done? I'm not meant to catch this thing. And just like, let it go. And then carried on back to what he was doing. But their interactions with other scavengers, or what are seen as other scavengers, I mean, you can see how they're feeding nose to nose, face to face there with all of those vultures. Because in that case, there's plenty, there's more than enough to go around, and the hyena would waste more energy in chasing away all of those vultures constantly than it would if it just sat down and carried on with its lunch. And then down on the bottom of the screen, on the bottom right of the screen, you see there's that picture of the hyena with a jackal, and this. We watched this jackal follow this hyena for a good couple of kilometers, and it looks like they're walking side to side, which actually makes for kind of a cute photograph. But this jackal was about 4 or 5 yards behind, so not too far behind. And every now and then the hyena would kind of turn around and give a little, and the cheeky little jackal would zip away, and then he'd be back on him again. And he'd turn around and he'd do that, and he'd be back on him again. But then you flip that around, and hyenas will often do that, and especially where Richard and I first started guiding with leopards. They are notorious for following leopards, where a leopard will go and it will start its territorial prowl and walking around in the evening, and a hyena will just sit and follow and follow and follow, because a leopard's not going to turn up a free meal. If an impala runs across the leopard's path, even though it knows there's a hyena behind it, it's still going to take that chance. So hyenas, being opportunistic as well as good hunters, they'll just sit there in patience. And there's no animal, well, there's certainly no predator in the African bush that shows more patience than a hyena. I've seen hyenas sitting at the base of a tree where there's a leopard up top with a kill for not hours, for days on end, just waiting for something to fall. And leopards, they're a little bit more sadistic than a lot of others. They'll sit there and they'll know that that carcass is never going to fall out, and there's just bones left. And when the hyena's taking a nap, the leopard runs down and runs away and leaves the poor hyena there just to kind of stare at his dangling meal above. I'm sure you've seen some really interesting interactions between leopards and hyenas in the Sabi Sands, haven't you?
Yeah, we're going to look at a video now, but what's fascinating is some of the latest research is showing that with female leopards specifically, with hyenas following them, female leopards have been known to kill and walk straight away from their kill just to give the hyena some food while it moves off to go get a meal of its own. They know that they can't get away from it, so they might as well just put something out there for the hyena so it has a chance to get away and get some food for itself. But one day we were watching, and this video starts in a second. I don't know why it lags like this, but we watched a big male leopard whose name was Sand River catch a warthog. And as he was choking it out, the warthogs make a hell of a noise when they're dying. They make this squealing noise. It's not fantastic. But a hyena had heard this and then came in. So you can see him here. My tracker was actually filming the whole thing, and you can hear one of the other guides also chatting through it. But here comes the hyena, and the hyena actually starts feeding on this carcass while the leopard's still trying to kill the warthog. He's like, move out of my way.
Yes.
So watch it. He's chowing, and that leopard's still, the warthog's still alive at this point. The leopard doesn't want to let go, otherwise the warthog's just going to run.
See, now hyenas run in here, and basically the leopard's still holding on, but the hyena's just eating its life away.
Because that's probably the toughest animal for a leopard to kill. People often think, oh, leopards have this affinity for warthogs, and they do go after them, but it's not.
Don't worry, you're right, Don.
For leopards to kill.
Just sit very still, Don.
So this leopard was having none of this situation. He wanted this hyena gone.
Okay.
And the hyena just wanted to call in reinforcements now.
Was he able to get the carcass away from the hyena?
Yeah, he managed to get it up a tree.
Yeah, I agree with the hyena.
Unbelievable. And it's amazing how, and that's also personalities of different animals. It's amazing how some leopards are a lot more prone to being chased off than others are. And then you'll know that some hyenas are more brazen towards other. It's that confidence game. It's that I exude a lot of confidence, which again, it's another misconception about hyenas, that they're portrayed as these sort of skulking beasts in the background that they don't really feature too much on the food chain. But if you were to look at it in terms of that hierarchy, almost similar to the success rate, but with the lions then taking the top seat. And if you were to look at the hierarchy of your mega predators, you obviously got lions at the very top, but then hyenas at a close second. And that is very much a fluid relationship based on how many are in an interaction. If you've got 10 lions and 20 hyenas, the hyenas will likely push the lions away, and vice versa. But then all the way at the very other end of the spectrum are your cheetah. And this poor cheetah, he actually had a deformed lower jaw that didn't make making kills very easy for him. And we'd watch this poor guy stalk and hunt and kill an impala, and 5 minutes later and it's a fairly young hyena, just comes in, pushes them off, and the cheetah can't afford to have an injury, so the cheetah just lets it go and loses its kill.
So the other interactions they have is with us. So this hyena, on one of the NatHab trips, we go to Mashatu, and this guy decided he wanted to check what was going on inside the car with me. So he actually tried to hop up a few times onto the door to see what was going on, which was both intimidating and exhilarating at the same time. But I think it's safer to leave them doing their bit as they do. Now, Matt was talking about this hyena-lion relationship and the hierarchy of these guys. Effectively, it depends on numbers. So places like the Serengeti, your dominance level, your apex predator, the top of the food chain there would probably be a hyena, because they've got big clans, they can fight off the lions can't move as much. And one of the coolest things about hyenas is that their milk has the highest fat content of any of the land mammals, at about 98% fat. So they can feed a cub and leave it for 7 days before returning, which allows them to follow the migration, to move 100 miles away, kill something, eat something, and then move back to their little ones. But their interactions with lions are legendary. And I'm going to let Matt talk you through this crazy sighting. And once he's spoken through it, I'll play the video for you guys.
So we had heard these bellows of this poor buffalo from breakfast, and by the time we got to where this was all happening, The buffalo was just about on his last breath. The lion was starting to feed. And what we'd actually discovered was that it must have been an injured or a very old buffalo, because it was the leopard that had in fact started those wounds on the back. So the leopard had started the killing process, for lack of a better choice of words, and the lion had heard the buffalo bellowing and had come in. And this is a single male lion, a vagrant lion that we didn't know. He wasn't part of any coalition or anything, so he didn't have the ability to call in reinforcements. And as the bellowing started and then started to slow down, we noticed 1, 2, 3 odd hyenas popping up around him. And you could sort of see he was still in a fairly confident mode. And then as the sighting progressed, I'm talking over the space of about 30 or 40 minutes, we saw more and more and more hyena arriving. And I mean, in the Sabi Sands, your clans might exceed 15 or 20 individuals, but then they're going into extended families and extended clans. So you're defining clan size in that area. You're looking at 10 to 20 individuals. And by the time these hyenas had started their cacophony of cackles, there were maybe 50 or so hyenas around this line, and they were all starting to, like we were saying earlier, that feeding frenzy. You could feel that electricity in the air. They were all feeding off of one another's energy, and they started to come in on this male lion and started to antagonize him more and more and more. And they would come in and they would bite, and he would chase, and then they would run in and start feeding, and then they would come in a little bit more. And eventually this male lion, by the time he had picked his head up, because he's got this carcass in the bush and he can hear everything that's going on, but he's got his head down and so focused on trying to get as much of this meal out of it as he can before he knows he's ultimately going to get chased off. And he picks his head up, and he's kind of at that, around this time, that when the hyenas are starting to come to the front, he realizes that he might have made a bit of a mistake in staying for as long as he did. And Richard can show you the video now, and you'll see exactly what happens. I mean, these hyenas were literally grabbing and pulling at his tail. You can just hear them, and what we think is this laughing and cackling and chattering. That's them. They're trying to reinforce their dominance in that. And the lion's walking and he's kind of strutting away, but it's a lot more of saving face than anything else. And he's then slowly, as he's moving out, you can hear them almost coordinate. Okay, now we can move it, and now we can jump in and have our meal. But that whole thing lasted about probably close on an hour. And by the end of it, there were about 50 or so hyena that had been called in as reinforcements to chase this one lion away.
It's incredible to me the level of noise that you get into, and I can't tell you what it does to your body, to your system when you're listening to all of this going. You can hear in that video why they are called the laughing hyena, and that cackling, that laughing, that it's riling each other up. It's like a crowd just trying to push each other over the edge to make this all happen. But where it gets crazy is that male lions aren't easily pushed off. I remember a sighting that I had where we had 3 male lions that killed the buffalo, and we also had it wasn't quite 50, but about 30 hyena in the area trying to get these 3 males off. But now not all heads are in. So it was dark. We switched off all the lights, and all the guests could hear was this whooping, woo, woo, as they were trying to build up courage. And it was pitch black. We just switched off all the lights and let the auditory senses go. And you would just go, you'd hear this rolling up, and then you just hear as the lion came off and chased all of them. And then it would start again. It was the most incredible thing. So male lions, and those 30 hyena didn't manage to push those 3 male lions off. So one male lion on his own like this with that many hyenas is going to lose. But for the most part, the number is about 4 hyenas to 1 lioness will be able to push him off. And we had a sighting where 2 lionesses had pulled down a zebra. The hyenas had heard them, and the hyenas had come in and chased them off. And they actually chased a lion up a tree. So you'll see them coming in here, and they're looking up the tree because they've chased this lioness right into the top of this marula tree. Check how high this chick is sitting. She looks very comfortable up top there. And then the others were chasing the other lion. So we'll let the noise play out from here. So they're looking, they see the other lioness up top, and then the other female decides, no, there was still another one out here. Let's go find her. So off she goes on a little mission. Lioness is hiding in the grass.
Because by comparison to a lot of other predators, they don't have as strong a sense of sight. The sense of sight compared to a lion is much weaker.
You can see the intensity there. What were you saying there, Matt? I couldn't hear you.
No, I was just saying that the sense of sight is not as strong as that of a lion. And I've actually seen hyenas walking right up to almost like this far away from a leopard. They can smell it, and they can certainly hear it. But unless it's a movement or something right in front of them, they often can't see the animals that they're following by their sight. They're following by their smell. She must have, okay, there's another lion, there's a lion there. Because I mean, in the video, you can see the tawny flank of the lion clearly, yeah. But the hyena couldn't. The hyena could just smell there's a lion in that direction.
But it's an incredible thing to watch that interaction and watch these unbelievably misunderstood creatures being coming into their own light and showing their power and their thought process and how they work things out and how they move through everything. And I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Matt, but I think I'm ready for some questions.
Yeah, no, let's bring some questions on. Let's see if we can answer anything that we haven't already about these animals that are not truly represented as Disney once had them in The Lion King.
Thank you so much, guys. That was absolutely fascinating. We do have some great questions for you, and I'd like to remind folks watching that if you have a question for Matt or Rich, you can submit those in your control panel under the questions field. Okay, first question. Their ears seem quite large. Is this for heat regulation and enhanced hearing?
So it's for their hearing. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier when we were starting the ability of these animals to hear, they can hear a kill. They can hear lions feeding on a kill from about 5 miles away. I got things a little twisted earlier. So the hearing is about 5 miles away. A spotted hyena can smell a carcass from about 8 miles away, and a brown hyena can smell a carcass from about 10 miles away. So ears play a massive role in being able to hear what's going on around them, pick up any sounds of a dying animal or free food, and then smell plays a massive role in getting free food too.
And then you'll also notice with that, with the art wolf, just in terms of their head to ear ratio is the highest of the lot, and that helps them with listening for little insects and for termites and ants and the like that they're listening for that might be a couple of inches underground. So yes, their large ears definitely play a role in their significantly heightened sense of hearing.
And these little guys can eat up to 400,000 termites in a night. I'm pretty sure that there are a couple of you out there that wouldn't mind them coming to clean up your homes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are curious about predators of hyenas. Who's their greatest enemy?
Go for it, Matt.
So lions. Lions are probably their number one enemy from birth to adulthood. If a lion has the chance to take down or to wound significantly a hyena, they definitely will. Leopards on younger ones, but very rarely will any of these predators actually eat the hyena that they kill. So a lion will kill a hyena and it'll just leave it. Whereas if a lion kills a cheetah or a leopard, or even wild dogs, they have been known to consume. But most things that will kill a hyena will just kind of leave them there. And then the youngsters, any larger predator that gets a chance, with probably the exception of a cheetah. But yeah, lions are that's definitely their number one predator.
Another really popular question is, what is the life expectancy of a hyena?
Jeez. Matt, can you help me out here, bro? I have totally drawn it.
The early 20s, so a little bit higher than the life expectancy of a lion, and significantly higher than the life expectancy of, let's say, a leopard or even a wild dog. So you would think that based on, because general rule of thumb, if you look at a lot of mammals, body size and metabolism will then be the direct result and effect of longevity. So something like a shrew will have a very high metabolism, very short lifespan. Elephant, slow metabolism, larger lifespan. But out of all of the carnivores, hyenas, I think, might be teetering on the longer edge of longevity, sort of the early 20s.
You also have to remember that the longevity is also driven by the size of the clans, their ability to get food, their ability to get space at a food table. You know, all of that will play a massive role in it. A leopard, if it starts losing or gets injured, or a cheetah, if it gets injured, it cannot keep going. It has to then, it'll either die or it has to kill, where a hyena can at least rely on something else to do that and has the brawn to be able to push other things off and move the chips around as it may.
Okay. And people are curious about if across all species of hyena, if they have the same family structures.
No, they're all different. So things like your aardwolf might be singular and pairs, mated pairs. Brown hyenas are very solitary, coming in together to mate because of the large deserted areas and their habitats, whereas the spotted hyenas have formed these bigger clans. And I'm not very sure on how the striped hyenas family structures work.
No, but I would assume, just based on habitat and range, it would be something similar to that of the brown hyena.
Yeah,
exactly. Being a lot more desert dwelling. And the brown hyenas are very well documented in that case study in the 70s of the book Cry of the Kalahari, where they describe these clans being very fluid in their social structure and hierarchy. They do have a set hierarchy based on those scents that Richard was describing earlier, where they've got the short-term and the long-term scent when they move through the areas, but they've got a very loose structure compared to that strict hierarchy of the spotted hyena, and them living in a very tightly knit family group.
And what age do they reproduce, and is it only the dominant females that breed?
So as soon as the males will come into season, you know, be ready far quicker, but it's generally your alpha female, your matriarch, that will get the chance to breed. And how the hierarchy structure works is you have your highest ranking female through lowest ranking female, And then your highest ranking male is outranked by your lowest ranking female. So your highest ranking male will get the best opportunity to mate with your female. So they're almost got to climb the ranks in order to get to that point. And as Matt pointed to earlier, is you could have the matriarch and then the beta female or the female under the matriarch both having cubs. And if there's not enough food source or anything, the alpha female will go in there and wipe out that other litter, making sure that her litter is the one that gets all of the special treatment.
Yeah, but it's not uncommon to see several different litters within one clan at once. I've been with the Kruger Park just down the road from us here. We've been fortunate that we can visit that. And at the moment, there's a huge number of hyenas that are with cubs. And we saw a clan the other day that must have 3 or 4 different ages of litters from a couple of weeks. When they're born, these spotted hyenas, when they're born, they're completely black, and then they grow into their spots. And so they're black at a very young age. And then, so if you see one like that, then one a little bit bigger with spots, and one a little bit bigger, and so on and so forth, then you've got several different litters within the same clan. Like those two there would be siblings, even though one is bigger than the other, but those two there would be a different age from that very dark one that we were just on to the one that's sitting that looks like he's just about to fall over backwards from scratching his ear. And then, yeah, that one is a couple of months older than the other two peering through that rock. That one's doing a little bit of yoga.
What's the average size of a full-grown hyena?
So a full-grown female hyena will get to around 160 pounds, and a male hyena at about 125, 130 pounds. So you can see in the spotted hyenas just how that weight difference, that extra testosterone that the female carries, how much bigger that makes her, and how much more imposing that makes her in the greater scheme of things.
And what's the gestation period?
Gestation, I think we're sitting at about, what's it, about 100 days, so just a little bit longer than a lion. But not as short as something like a wild dog. And that's typically, your gestation can be determined by the number in a litter. So your wild dog's much bigger litter. They're born closer to the altricial side of young. So they are not, they're not fully developed and they're born. But the hyenas, because they're typically only 2 that are in a litter, they'll have a slightly longer gestation and they'll be born a little bit more developed, but still, like other carnivores, blind, can't really see, can't really walk for at least the first couple of days, but closer to the 100, 120 day range.
And what's really fascinating, and again, Matt spoke about this earlier, was that testosterone in the females of the spotted hyenas has closed their vaginas and caused the clitoris to become extended, and that is what they mate through. So it's a weird thing when you see them mating. The male's almost got to do this funny act of trying to lean backwards to get to where he needs to get to, and she gives birth through this clitoris, through the pseudo penis, and because of this very narrow canal that it has to come through, often the first litter has about a 60 to 70% mortality rate on birth because there's not enough space for them to come through.
Amazing. And do different levels of hyenas have different jobs within their clan?
So certainly, I mean, in terms of rearing and establishing dominance, I would assume so, that there would be a I don't know, like a chart of it's your job to do this and to do that. But that's what we were touching on earlier on, with how fluid sometimes those structures can be, and how they will be determined by one another in the clan. So if 3 of the subordinate females don't think that the alpha female is doing her job correctly, they will almost have a coup and kick her out. And so with that, I would say, yes, you've definitely got an alpha that will be in charge of everything, and that will be the dominant one, the driving force around discipline and fighting off other rival clans. But in terms of the subordinates underneath that, it would probably be along the lines of certain beta females would have more responsibility in rearing youngsters, and then at the bottom of the end, when the cubs are old enough that the mother doesn't have to stay with them for prolonged periods of time, then those will be the babysitters. So your 2 or 3 year olds that aren't quite breeding age, but that aren't quite cubs, will then stay and be the babysitters. And so those will be their sort of allocated tasks through the hierarchy chain.
That hierarchy also plays a massive role when it comes to feeding. So depending on how much food is available, a large kill, everyone will feed together. But as soon as there's limited amounts of food available, that hierarchy kicks in very quickly, and the biggest, most dominant will get the lion's share, or in this case, the hyena's share of that kill, leaving not a lot for the others. And if one of the others tries to come in, there'll be a big fight that ensues to again assert that dominance. There is a very clear hierarchy within these guys.
All right, the final question I'll ask tonight is, what kind of interactions do humans and hyenas have?
So I'm going to take a little bit of this, and Matt can finish off, but we both been lucky enough to experience these animals firsthand and be close to them. And I'm going to put this video on while I'm talking, but they're very, very inquisitive creatures. And this specific clan of hyenas here at Mashatu had a very famous filmmaker named Kim Voliter, who he became part of this group. And I think this hyena that's here sniffing me is a hyena he called Bounce. He used to play with him, and they had a really good relationship. So there is something greater about these animals. And one of our drink stops that we had while at Mashatu, he came and joined us for it, and he was chatting to us, and I asked him about what he thought the ethics of this situation was, of spending the time with them, of crossing that line, that imaginary line that we have. And he brought up a very interesting fact. He said to me, it is all about emotion, and we as humans feel that we're the only ones with emotion, but the moment you show an animal love, it will show it back, and there is a to and fro. And he's not the first, and he won't be the last to do it, because if we look at Jane Goodall taking her first step to putting her hand out, and that famous photo of the 2 hands, her hand and the chimp's hands coming together, it just shows that animals respond to that. And it could be a very interesting situation if we delved a little deeper into it. What are your feelings, Matt?
I couldn't agree more, and I think out of most, well, I can actually say confidently that even though they have this appearance as these bloodthirsty, dirty scavengers, I would, out of all of the predators that we've mentioned tonight, out of the lions, even wild dogs, leopards, if we were sitting at a drink stop, or if we were sitting somewhere and out of the vehicle on foot and a hyena approached, that would probably be the animal that I would be most comfortable with letting get close, because they're so inquisitive. But the same as with that can turn very quickly with the interaction, with people that are camping or at night, when there's a lot more confidence that a hyena has. But in terms of our interaction with them, I think what Richard is saying is very on point with is what we allow the animal, what we give the animal, they will allow us to take back. And certainly Kim's interactions with hyenas, because he's had similar interactions with leopards as well, and with cheetah, where he has gotten down into their level and they've allowed him to get into their life because he has allowed them into his. And yeah, there's something very special about them. I think hyenas show a lot more intelligence and their inquisitive nature, which allows them to do that.
Okay, great. Well, that's all we have time for today, unfortunately, but I'd like to turn it back over to you guys for some closing comments, and we'll start with Matt.
Thanks, Kendall. And once again, thanks to NATAB and the WWF for hosting these fantastic webinars and for getting everyone through their lounges and offices back into nature every day. And yeah, thanks to my co-host Richard for another great fireside chat. It's always fun.
Always fun. Matt, thanks for your enthusiasm through the whole thing. Kendall and NatHab and WWF for making these possible. While not a lot of people are getting out to travel, we're all traveling virtually at the moment. It really is a pleasure to have all of you here and to chat to all of you. And yeah, we learn as we go along, and I hope you guys stay safe and get traveling soon.
Well, it was another fantastic presentation from you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. And my thanks as well to everyone who tuned in today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. We did record today's presentation, so we'll have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.